All right, welcome into the show. 4 Cowboys who popped off in preseason week 1. We're going to get to those as we've spent the last 24 hours studying the Cowboys preseason loss to the Rams. And we have some Cowboys that won big and showed promise they might be able to help in the regular season. Is it time to say something about Joe Milton as the Cowboys backup quarterback? Maybe. Do the Cowboys have another young promising running back, though, or a linebacker ready to take a big step year 2? And don't look now, but there's a new nickel back prospect coming on strong. And there is an update on what the Cowboys are looking for when cuts happen and rosters are finalized here in now just a couple of weeks. It is time for the Sunday show. Take it away, Jimmy.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about this, Cowboys? Yeah!
I welcome in. I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas-Fort Worth, 25 years sports radio veteran. And joining me, as always, is the all-academic SEC guard from Kentucky, Newbear Lesniewski. How the hell you doing today, buddy?
I just don't want it to stop. I mean, you can get the condensed versions, you can get the all 20. There's just like a never-ending influx of new ball. It's the best.
It is the best, and the best online sports book for your wagering opportunities this weekend is going to be BetOnline. As always, I mean, look at this. Fastest payouts guaranteed, A-plus rating review, unmatched game integrity, and they have poker as well. Absolutely love BetOnline, and it's a great place to sports wager, especially here in the great state of Texas. Okay, 4 players to be positive about, Newbear. We're going to get to these here in just a moment. Maybe if you want to go ahead and skim forward, go ahead and do that. But Joe Milton has been such a big topic here, Newbear. What do you think about his performance?
Well, I mean, you want to get into the X's and O's, the P's and Q's, the specificity of it. There's a lot to pick apart. I think everyone's focused on the misfirings. I think all gas, no brakes is the headline coming out of the game.
Yeah.
I was more impressed with how he responded to adversity. I kind of expected him to come out and throw some laser cannon rocket balls. I loved seeing him throw the touchdown with some touch, and I loved seeing him never have a dip in body language. That magnetic megawatt smile never left his face. It's the preseason, right? It is beyond like kissing babies level stuff or just ending careers level stuff where, you know, Shedeur Sanders, anybody who's super excited, great, be excited for the young man. I just want to show you, you know, Kenny Pickett 5-for-5 drives where, you know, you can make mountains out of molehills and vice versa. So when I go through the machinations of saying, you know, how am I going to evaluate this? I think there's a lot more that goes into it than just 17 of 29 or just, you know, this guy was wide open and he missed it. It's like, how do you respond to that stuff?
You know, I think his confidence is a major story. It's really impressive how confident he is. And I think he might even be overconfident.
Sure.
You know? I think he really needs to scale back because if you are not aware of your weaknesses, I don't think others are going to be aware of your strengths. You know, and right now he is trying to play through his weaknesses way too much, right? Let's get running more. Let's take what the defense gives you more. Look, even Patrick Mahomes struggles when the opposition knows he's trying to make big plays in the pass game. They've gotten really, really good at covering and having safeties in the area. So, you know, if you have great touch and anticipation, you can make those plays happen. But for me, it was just a continuation off Joe Milton's career, which is a lot of frustrating decision-making and then the occasional great play. So I guess at this point, Newbear, as disappointed as I am to say it, I'd rather see Will Grier as the Cowboys backup. I think he gives you a better chance to win.
You may get to that point, especially for right now, especially from a week-to-week element, right? I think if Dak were to go down, you would play Joe Milton because you would want to see how it plays out, right? You want to see if he can play his way into being QB1 as opposed to just being like the most tantalizing clipboard holder, you know, league wide, because we know he can go 83 at any time. What I would caution you about relative to this is we don't know if the young man had a Red Bull. We don't know what the pregame routine. He literally,
and that's a good point. Like, what happened from week 18 to last night? Like,
he was too amped up, right? He gave himself. This is what I love too. So he gave himself a D-. So you talk about him being overconfident. I think he's overconfident with the ball in his hands and a dude running wide. He's mashing whatever button is with that receiver, X, square, L1. He's hitting that button as hard as he can on the controller because that is default mode for Joe Milton, right? He's got to learn how to layer. He's got to learn how to touch. How does that come? That comes through reps. Right now, he came out firing literally, and it was like a cannon, right? Where you lit the fuse and you didn't know how far, how hard, or maybe even where.
That makes sense. Like a big league pitcher making his debut, or, early in his career for a new team, moved up from AAA to pro ball. And it's like, there's too much energy. But I look back onto what he said in a Todd Archer story in the build up to this game. He was reflecting on week 18 last year, New Bear. He said, that game allowed me to accept the fact that I'm here and I can play in this league. But I feel like there's a lot more that I can do and let out. If you think about what happened week 18 and then what happened shortly after the season ended with him requesting a trade, he feels like Drake May was going to impede his progress, and he needed to get to a team with a more veteran quarterback, maybe that was injury prone, to give him a path to starting more quickly, right? And I think if he scaled back his expectations to believe I'm a backup, and if I manage this game and take what the defense gives me, there's a career to be had here. I don't think there's a career to be had trying to be Joe Burrow or whoever he thinks he is.
That's interesting. So you're literally talking about him. I'm a check down merchant.
Well, no, yes, be a check down merchant. Like, the majority of the league is check down merchants. Like, what league are you in where you think you're going to be Dan Fouts and win? But I think it's making the defense defend the whole field. And I don't know if he's physically capable of a short passing game, but I mean, what you're going to see with Joe Milton is these insane highlights. And you're like, wow, if it was like that all of the time, this is an MVP candidate. But
yeah, let's do two things real quick, right? Let's just reset on. Let's agree, or let's make sure. Let's see if we do agree or not. He wasn't making terrible reads every time, and he was missing dudes who were open because he was throwing line drives when he needed to throw changeups, right? And he had a few tight window balls where he's not forget that he is capable of fitting those balls in those windows in the same way young Brett Favre became Brett Favre, the same way Elway became Elway, right? Like, he's capable because he has the capability. He's got to prove that he can do it when the bullets are flying. But what we're all upset about is him missing dudes who are running wide open because Shoddy is going to scheme plays. You brought up Mahomes. One of the things that is infuriating and was especially in his playing, right, from the 50 season second year MVP where everybody's going to know my name to how do I adapt to the league adapting to me, is a lot of times you see his throws, those, parallel to the ground, enter the matrix Mahomes throws, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is over in the flat doing jumping jacks. So even guys that were prematurely pushing into the GOAT conversation do this stuff from time to time. The thing with Milton is there's so much less tape. There are so many more less reps. So every mistake he makes is magnified.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for how much just the overall difficulty level is turned down. I mean, Stetson Bennett looked like he was the next Brock Purdy. I'm going to step right in the league and set this thing on fire. Like, the defensive backs aren't there. The pressure isn't there. If you just can't execute incredibly well in this environment, like, it's like a basketball player going to summer league. If you can't drop 30 and have 8 rebounds and 7 assists as a point guard, then you're probably not going to be able to even crack the rotation. The difference between preseason ball and the NFL is significant. I wouldn't be surprised if the best college teams would compete against what is out there on preseason games Saturday. Maybe not win, but it's not big because all the star players would be on the college team, and I think we threw Joe Milton some bail and said, bro, he didn't play in college much. 1 year, he had to sit in New England. But the reason he's sitting is because he's just not good. You have to be able to put it all together. So,
hey, real quick, let's not forget one thing too here, right? So there's practice, right? Completely controlled environment. Then there's the regular season games right in between is preseason. Preseason is basically like organized, structured, continuous tempo, continuous warm-up practice, right? When we're talking about the vanilla, when we're talking you're right about not being able to execute the easy things. You want to see execution. If you're throwing a tunnel screen, you want to see the receiver catching the ball and get into the tunnel and getting upfield because it's there. What you wanted to see Joe Milton do was hit the dudes who were wide open, and even if they fall down, at least they catch the damn ball. And you go, Joe, just take a little bit more off of the change. Throw an 82-mile-an-hour changeup instead of an 88-mile-an-hour. But he literally just airmailed the dude, right? And he's amped up. And he's throwing laser cannon rocket balls. What I'm saying is that when the game speed goes to regular season, just like it goes to the next level in postseason, right, where we talk about how there's a difference between playoff and regular season. One of the things that was remarkable about Week 18 last week was how at ease Joe Milton was, because he knew he was a good enough athlete to do the Fran Tarkenton stuff. He's got the arm to do that. No, yes, right? When you throw the ball back across the field, just like a 40-foot three-pointer from Steph Curry, if it ain't Steph. Like, part of the problem for him, and part of what Schottenheimer has to realize going forward, run a draw. Run QB power on first. Get this guy hit. Get him into the flow of the game where he's not thinking. He's just reading, reacting, playing, see ball, hit ball, because he's pressing. He probably did have the Red Bull, but even if he didn't, his adrenaline is coursing through his veins. And then you let the bull out of the tunnel, and you have to take some of that off of him quite literally and slow him down.
And maybe this is a week where he does that, New Bear. Have you ever had like a magical game of golf or pool or darts? One of these, I don't know. I guess for me, it'd be golf, right? And sometimes I have this round where I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually pretty good at golf.
Yeah.
And then I go play again. And I'm like, oh, that was just a lucky round, or that was my best round of the year. I think for Joe Milton, that happened last year in Week 18, and it told him, I'm good. I need to go be a starter somewhere. And he would, you can't just go out and play another football game as a pro, right? So he had to wait 7-8 months. Last Saturday night was, oh, that's right, I'm not the second coming. Maybe I should have not demanded a trade out and thought I was going to come down here and compete for the starting job with Dak flipping Prescott. Maybe I do need to reevaluate how I'm going to attack football, or I could get flushed out of this league within a couple of years.
I don't think he's sitting here thinking he's better than Dak. I do think he thought he was better than Drake May, and physically he is. Drake May is going to be a really good player. He looks great, and they finally got him some weapons. You see Travion Henderson? Holy cow, should he be a Cowboy, right?
Yeah.
And he's
wanted him bad. We wanted him bad on the show in the G-Bag Nation. We were talking about Henderson all spring.
So you go through this and you go, okay, let's just say everything is true that you just said about getting out and who he thinks he is and maybe what he should. But dude, he is not sitting in that huddle thinking for 1 second anything other than I can throw the ball farther and run a beat Dak in a 40. He does not think he's better than Dak Prescott as a quarterback. What he's going to do here, though, is learn, and what he's going to do here is hope that an opportunity presents itself in a real situation, right? It's easy to shrug off what happens in preseason. Hell, the Rams don't care about the preseason at all, right? Stetson Bennett, like what he did there, that's just confirming or denying what they already think about the kid. So with Joe Milton, what you're talking about are expectations. With Joe Milton, what you're talking about are, what does this look like if Dak were to go down for real? How quickly would you have to shift to Will Grier? Then let's not forget, Will Grier goes in and looks like, people forget how good of an athlete he is. I mean, he was a really, really good college player. He's looked really, really good in the preseason, but he looked so good despite all that, and despite Dak vouching for the kid, that the Cowboys were just like, we're good.
Yeah, there's no upside on Will Grier,
That's the difference.
Yeah, it's like Cooper Rush. Hey, the guy was above 500 quarterback in 2 extended stints, but he's never going to be more than a guy who can totally minimize risk. I think Will Grier has more talent than Cooper Rush, not as much as Joe Milton. But I'll tell you what, Joe can't escape the fact today, as they're looking at film and evaluating and looking back. And hopefully Joe says, hey, tell me more about how I can take what the defense gives, play simple, use my legs a little bit, Let's spend a lot of time focusing on taking something off the ball to throw a more catchable ball. All of these things can add up. I don't know how you can look at what happened for him last year in week 18 and his demand for a trade and believe anything other than, Joe Milton thinks he's significantly better than what he really is. And it will not be until he is humbled significantly, and being that athletic, tall, good looking, talented, doing backflips, doing every TikTok dance. Naturally, he's just like, oh, watch this, watch that. Why would you not be super confident? You can throw it 80 yards. And the way that he drops back and hunts that play, that's what he thinks football is. I did a short about Joe Milton 2 months ago where he's talking about the playbook and all the different decisions. And he could not vocalize any of that. I think it might be a situation. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. What is that, Dunning-Kruger? Where you don't know much about a hobby or a skill. So you look at it and you're like, of course I can do this incredibly well. I just haven't been given the opportunity. Today has to be the time where that stops. And it might be time for a Cowboys coach or maybe Dak himself to really break this down with some tough love, or he's not going to have a chance to get a career going.
You talked about how he can't escape the criticism, right? Well, he also can escape the pocket, and he can escape
the
trouble in the mesh and any of the
guy.
So when he does that, what does he also have? That 80-yard howitzer. So what is that going to do? Buy him a second chance, buy him another opportunity. And I think when you look at 17 for 29 for 143, 1-1, that's the bottom line. That's the final numbers. And you go, man, just think about how different this would be. There's 2 or 3 in particular where he had dudes running wide open, and just 1 or 2 of those hitting, and 1 or 2 of those being a layered contextual throw where he took a little something off it, and you start looking at it, you go, wow, just think about how different 18 of 29 for 240 and 2 it's a completely different story, one throw. And that's the thing about this guy is because of his physical capabilities, you're one play away from the scoreboard changing the number, right? Because of everything that he has shown thus far, where he's professional quarterback, on time, on target, running the system in practice. Then he gets out there and he literally looks like the Energizer Bunny. And the thing that I keep coming back to is preseason game meaningless, right? Not meaningless to a guy, a guy who doesn't think guy who isn't too big for his britches when he hits his funny bone and is injured and is begging to get back in the game. Not meaningless, not too big for his britches, not an ego-driven conversation when the guy gives himself a D-, says, I have to start better, and this is on me, printed as loud and as big and as wide as you want to go. I mean, the story here might not be Joe Milton getting the humble pie, but being him more self-aware than we think, and hoping that when he steps into the chair for round 2, there's no coffee involved in that pregame meal.
I love it. I hope I'm wrong. A game 2, and I hope he makes all the adjustments for whatever mental reasons he needs to get there. Okay, up next here on How About Wow.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
We mentioned Stetson Bennett, New Bear. There was a defensive back who did something Saturday night, and we're going to talk about him, and I'll get to him. But the others, Cropper, Elijah Clark, Kamon Hall, even Mukuamu, like, I really think they could change all of these guys out and just get players that other teams cut, and there would be no difference. Like, they need Dig, Bland's, Revel healthy, because their backup defensive backs might as well just be spring league players.
I texted you real early in this game because I can't. The Stetson Bennett thing is fascinating for me, right? Because everyone compared him to Drew Brees, but like a more athletic Drew Brees, and he was a really, 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 really good. How many was that? Enough reallys? He was a really good college quarterback. Fine. He also sounds like and looks like the last cut from like Clint Eastwood's movie that just went direct to VHS. Show my age a little bit. DVD. I can't stand when we do this about, oh, hey, look at what he's literally playing against used car salesmen. And I texted you very early in this game. I said,
thank you.
I said, everybody who's injured in that DB room is about to get forced back onto the field, whether they're healthy or not. Right. I mean, I've been talking about any luck from the injury gods. My God, the backup, the depth, the lack of it is so magnified. And those are the kinds of things that you can take out of preseason that aren't overreactions to me, because if you're getting beat by the other team's backups, like if you're a backup playing against CeeDee Lamb, because CeeDee Lamb wants to make sure, he's ready for season one. Maybe he had an ankle and he wants to just get a series, hit a go ball or do a Tony toe tap and just make sure he's right. And you get burnt toast from 88 Club.
Yeah.
Right. This was not that.
No, this was not that. This was guys that you're like, who is this guy? Okay, I'm going to Google him now. Who is torching the Cowboys? This is Stetson Bennett to, players that probably will not be playing on Sundays. Now, it wasn't all bad. Let's start with our first guy. We got 4 guys that we think, based on preseason game number 1, could do something for the Cowboys during the regular season. And New Bear, this is your guy. Okay, Zion Childress, the undrafted rookie from Kentucky. He led the team in tackles. He had a big TFL out of the nickel spot. And Joseph Hoyt wrote about him in the morning news here over the weekend. He's got an incredible hit against Clemson playing for Kentucky. This guy is physical. And I think this is the guy going into game 2 that I would like to see get more playing time and more experience and see if, he could be the nickel instead of Kamon Hall, who looked at times confused and unaware when the ball was in the air and the guy closest to him was receiving it.
Yeah, I mean, Zion Childress this might sound silly, but he's basically the same kind of conversation that we were having about Jack Sanborn in the linebacker room. He is extremely physical. He was a high school quarterback, so he's one of those high IQ guys who just understands what he's being asked to do and how what he does impacts everything around him, and then how to react and on the fly, right, respond to what the offense might do in turn. He's not fast, and he might not play as fast as you would like, but he is going to play with everything he's got. He is going to play hard, and when he arrives, he is going to make an impact. It's just one of those things where when you go height, weight, speed, length, nothing about him from a traits perspective stands out except for just being willing to put your face in the fan, make plays, being in the right place, start to finish. This is one of those dudes that as a depth piece, as a core special teamer, like all the things that the Cowboys love about what they want in every room, this guy is. He's not going to have that top end, that makeup, that catch up, that breakaway, whatever that thing is that we were talking about Joe Milton. It's the exact opposite conversation with this kid.
Yeah, he's got some great quotes in here as well. He says, Shoddy told me I'd have a good opportunity to be in the mix, and he told the wrong guy because I take advantage of every opportunity. And obviously the guy has limitations or he would have been, drafted. But the thing with this Cowboys defensive back group is we just talked about the bar is not high. If you can just be slightly below average, you're a massive step up from what's in there right now. And it's frustrating that the Cowboys are so weak. It's like, I don't know how you end up in this spot, New Bear.
The thing that you talk about,
it's undrafted guys and busts.
Sorry, you broke up. I'm sorry for stepping on you there for a second. The thing that's so challenging about it is like when you get beat by another dude who isn't a height, weight, speed, length guy, then you have to kind of rewind and go back and deconstruct it and say, like, what part of this might be related to scheme? Is this something? And then to your point about some of these guys like Hall, who's looking around, like almost asking for the answer to the question that was asked, like, hey man, can someone help me? Can I get a little cheat sheet? Anybody got the Cliff's notes? Like there were some guys who were kind of standing around after the play and you would put a question mark up over them, right? Over like a thought bubble with a question mark in it. Like, what the bleep just happened? And I think that's the thing that's so challenging about preseason, because we talk about vanilla, we talk about straightforward, everyone's playing 1 or 3, everyone's playing Tampa 2. Like this just is what it is. You're only rushing 4, you're not blitzing. And then you run it back and you're like, well, hold on for a second. Did he just blitz? Well, hold on for a second. When you look at it and you're just getting beat by the dude across from you over and over and over again, that is what is really concerning.
Yeah, so that's a good opportunity to segue to our next piece of media here for you. Stephen Jones talking with Nick Eatman. This is the most recent update we have about what they might be looking for as cut downs happen here coming up in a couple of weeks.
I think if I were to ask you which positions you might be concerned about, you probably wouldn't reveal that, but are there
would.
Okay. Well, what are some of those? I was seeing, is there some places where there's still questions to answer?
Yeah, I still think the corner position, only because you look at what's on injured reserve. We've got 3 corners over there, an NFI and 2 PUPs. That we're expecting to play for us this year. So certainly Kyer, we expect to play for us this year, but some other guys are getting opportunities. But with them not ready to go yet, you certainly think about that in terms of improving there if we get the opportunity to do it. I think, a guy like a Booth and Pride are doing a good job out there. But I certainly think that's a place where, we got our fingers crossed a little bit between Diggs and Revel and Butler, that we get those guys back in the mix. And then, you never know what's going to be out there that we can get our hands on. And then, I think, the big defensive tackle there with Mozzie and Jay are doing a really good job. But still, you want to see it live, because, that position in there in the trenches, you really don't get a great feel for it till you're really tackling to the ground and you're playing in a football game. But
I love the honesty from Stephen Jones in a lot of ways there. It was terrifically candid, but the BS meter just flew off the charts, a 10 out of 10 New Bear, when he talked about Mozzie and Jay Toya doing a really nice job, and Troy Pride and Andrew Booth. They're not, they're only doing a nice job because they're up against absolute jobbers on the other side in training camp. But what Saturday night exposed is that if you take just a half step up from undrafted depth, basically, which the Cowboys are trotting out there at several positions, to legitimate depth on a team that plans on contending and doesn't just keep their fingers crossed when guys get hurt. They say, hey, we need to go find another quality football player if we want to compete. That really, really exposed them. I love that he's talking about that. So your fingers are crossed and you're hoping to get lucky that either guys get healthy or teams will trade you guys or have to cut guys that are better than the ones that you have. But yeah, Booth, Pride, Cropper, Carson, you can't depend on any of these guys. And it's crazy that you could swing and miss on so many different kinds of defensive backs.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of those. I mean, Cowboys Nation is going to be up in arms if this becomes one of those things where some combination of Revel and Diggs, et cetera, start the season on PUP, and we don't see Gilly Lock, Bradbury, Asante Samuel Jr., et cetera, getting a call. Like if Jerry and Jones fam aren't willing to write a check and your season is literally hanging in the balance because you're crossing your fingers on cornerback depth that could destroy the totality of what this defense is capable of, that's going to have a lot of people saying a lot of things that you can't print or say when the red light's on, because you're right. I mean, the drop off from starter to backup is one thing. The drop off from backup to true depth piece, when that depth piece is undrafted free agent, like everyone wants to focus on, oh yeah, there's so many guys who don't get drafted who still make it. Your journey is your journey. Everyone's on a different path. Each one is unique. Yeah, that's true. What's not unique is 3 targets, 3 catches, 2 targets, 2 catches, 5 targets, 3 catches. Like, these guys were just getting beat. And that has to be something where, when you're looking at it from a traits perspective, speed, length, phase ability, none of those things showed up on tape. And if that continues to happen and you have these guys struggling to even do workouts on the side, struggling to get right to get back, then you got to write a check.
Yeah. Okay. Up next here on How About Wow. What'd you think of Tayan Holden? Here's a still shot of the one big play down the sideline. Had 2 for 42. This one for 35 yards. Great pass from Joe Milton actually here. And you could say, hey, maybe this is a blown coverage, or he found the perfect soft spot in zone coverage, or whatever it happened to be. But he just continues to do it. And Tayan Holden probably led the team in contested highlight catches during training camp, which is not easy to do on a team that has CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. New Bear, I want to say this might be wide receiver 3 with Turpin more of a gadget kind of guy who you have packages for and is actually just an overall skill player. I think Tayan Holden is really exciting, and if he's wide receiver 3 behind Lamb and Pickens and does what I think he is preparing to do, even in the NFL in regular season, this could be the best wide receiver core in the NFL. Am I too high right now on Tayan Holden?
No, because when we talked about this, when we unpacked it a little bit, both schools that he was at had really, really good rosters and guys who were playing specific roles, and he never really had that breakout. At the same time, this is where, when you talk about the draft and these undrafted guys, last year's draft had less star power, but more depth because of COVID, because of all these 5th and 6th year guys who took advantage of that extra year in NIL, where, especially if you're undrafted, you're going to make more money staying in school than you would go into the pros, right? And the depth pieces, when they do emerge from this and you find guys who do have enough of the traits, what's really interesting about Holden is that he has been mirroring, if not mimicking, Pickens in particular. The first big catch that he made was literally a recreation of something he was watching George Pickens do in practice every day on air. And so Holden went out there and basically taught himself how to do it on a stick nod. And then when he got in 7 shots or, goal line specific work, he went up and actually was able to replicate it because he had put in the work. So as we go through the process of this, you're talking about a polished guy, right? A 5-year guy who had to compete his ass off every day at both schools, who now gets to a place where he's not intimidated by anyone else after Pickens and Lamb in that room.
Up next on How About Wow, let's go to Marist Liufau. He is player number 3 on our list of 4 Cowboys players who impressed. Liufau, we did not know, what to make of this guy because his college tape was pretty impressive, but he would miss tackles a lot, and he missed amongst the most of any linebacker in college. So I was like, okay, how does this translate to where he could be a good NFL player? And I think he was a late day 2 pick. We had some great moments. I think he might be their best linebacker right now. And even when Overshown comes back, he might be your most consistent, considering DeMarvion is much more of a big play guy than a down in, down out producing linebacker. And again, the knock on Liufau coming out of college was he missed tackles, but I can live with that with the speed and intensity that he played with. Here he is down here. He's decleating Blake Corum, the running back. We already saw last year and in camp, dude has a nose for the football. He forced a couple of fumbles last year. He's knocked the ball out of CeeDee Lamb's hands and a couple of tight ends' hands here so far. So this is what the Cowboys need, a physical, game-changing, blow-up-the-play linebacker. And he just arrives with so much speed and conviction and leverage. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he creates chaos and breaks plays down. I hope it can happen when the starters are out there, right? We have to temper everything with, okay, what will Liufau do against an actual starting offense? But that is one of those where coming out of preseason game 1, the arrow is pointing up in a big way.
Yeah, I just got a little bit sidetracked because of Blake Corum for a second. And I'm just saying this not to go back to Milton or completely change this or take this away from Liufau, but just to kind of wrap all this stuff together in as much as some guys just take longer. Some guys, it doesn't click right, and then you're just hoping the light bulb goes on because you know what they're capable of. Blake Corum was like a top 10 Heisman guy. Blake Corum was the heart and soul of those great Michigan teams. He was a top 85 pick. He couldn't get on the field as a rookie, and he went to a place where McVay drafted him to play behind Henderson, to be the next guy, to maybe even replace him because they didn't want to necessarily invest what they just did. Then they were so concerned with how he did play as a rookie, they traded up in this year's draft to go get another guy just to make sure, right? So the thing that's really interesting with Liufau is you've seen different reports about some guys have him running faster than the official times. And then you see, some of the data working for and against, where you talk about playing with your hair on fire and making big plays and how that can make up for the ones that he might miss. My question becomes, like, how does he separate himself from these other guys? Sanborn, is going to be exactly where you want him to be. Murray might not, because he might miss some of them, even if he is, but he's the traits guy. Liufau's kind of like in between. Liufau's kind of like, I'm borrowing a little bit from this cookie jar, borrowing a little bit from that cookie jar. Does he almost become like the best of both worlds, or maybe the least bad of the other options that you have.
Yeah, that's what I think it is he brings youth and he brings more power. I think Sanborn's got all the savvy and the football, like toughness and football IQ and stuff. And, Kenneth Murray has been an incredible athlete and can come downhill, but those guys just scored incredibly poorly. When it comes to run defense, this team needs run defense. And Liufau, he showed an ability on Saturday night of just arriving at the play and pushing the pile back or getting a hand in there, getting a shoulder in there where I don't think other players would, and figuring out a way to be in on the play more consistently. And I think that kind of toughness is something the team desperately needs, and it will just, basically be, again, if you can be average at some things, unfortunately, that's a significant upgrade from what else the Cowboys have. Okay, then we go to the fourth player, the running back, Phil Mafa. Maybe the most impressive 36 yards on 10 carries you'll see.
RJ Harvey's was pretty tough. The Denver running backs are getting a lot of flack, and there were no holes, and he's buzzing around. And don't forget Caleb Johnson welcoming Travis Hunter to the NFL.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah, but it's the dirty yards with Mafa. And it reminds you of, prime Zeke or DeMarco Murray's big year in 2014, where maybe this should only be a 1 yard gain, but it's a 3 yard gain. It's a 4 yard gain, or should be caught in the backfield. It's a 2 yard gain. And I think there are tons of hidden yards in there. And it's interesting with Mafa because the agility isn't there, but he has enough speed and he has enough vision and then raw power. He's almost like a faster fullback. And, yes, again, what are your other options? So I'm looking at Sanders or Javonte Williams. I have to have Jaden Blue. And then, Hunter Lipke's probably going to make the team as H-back, tight end, fullback man. That's Mafa. I'm assuming Mafa can be great on special teams, but, more than that, you might look up at some point in the season and feel like this is our most consistent ball carrier who can actually punish the defense. And if you're trying to be that run first kind of team, I think there's pretty big value in there. It's just a matter of, can he get over 4-4-1 an attempt?
Here's what's really interesting about the Mafa thing are to do what he might not be good at on Sunday actual. Because the thing that you like about him is going north and south. The thing that you like about him is getting looked like against the Rams. As you go through this, can you toss it out to him? Can he do what James Conner's done in Arizona and what Clayton Davis and company were able to figure out, where you say, hey, when we do have to pin and pull because we got to show this team something else, and you can get him ramped up to his max speed, right? You don't have to be 22 miles an hour when you're at 19.5 before anybody touches you, and it's 7 yards down the field. The question, though, is, Jaden Blue is one of those guys that you think can do everything. So you tax him and you test him. You say, hey, let's run power, let's run toss, let's run all these things, and let's see how you run when it's messy, because we know how fast you are, but we want to make sure you can hold on to the ball, right? That's his test, traffic and fumbleitis. Javonte Williams with the knee, is there any explosivity? With Mafa, it becomes a lot of those runs came out of the shotgun. So you might be going like, Bear, what are you talking about? Like they didn't dot the I and just have him run power and ISO. He made those runs out of the gun. Really make his case is if he's able to get on the track and get through traffic and finish runs and show explosivity in the multiple different types of 23%, 23%, 23% that Clayton Adams wants to run. So there's a lot to look for this kid in the coming weeks, because if you're surprised by someone who's not supposed to be fast making plays where he actually gets to show off some of that athleticism and then finish those runs, sky's the limit.
Man, if you could get a good offensive line going for him, it could actually get him up to speed yards before contact and then meeting linebackers that way. I think it could get really fun with Phil Mafa. Mafa's a guy that probably should have been drafted higher. It was just such a ridiculously deep running back class that he ends up going round 7. So I think there's a lot to like here, a lot more to like than your typical 7th round running back. But what I was kind of hung up on in the draft process was this guy isn't going to be able to make people miss to fight through the traffic, and the quicker, more agile guys have a significant advantage, but he overcomes that with the power. It doesn't I don't need to be like every running back. Apparently, if I can get low and explode like Phil Mafa can very, very consistently. So
one of the things that's interesting that to piggyback on that is that you heard, coming out of Clemson when he was going through the process and people wanted to talk about his size and maybe that lack of the top end, right? Because you're talking about a guy whose production scores and athleticism scores, like they were both lower than you think when you go back and look at it. And you go like, why is that? And one of the things that I heard consistently, or that you see if you dig for it a little bit, is that a lot of he came there with the size, but he wasn't a physical runner. He played like a much smaller back and had to kind of learn how to become the physical nature that you're talking about right now. So if you're talking about a guy who maybe in high school was able to get by because he was a better athlete, and then he gets to Saturday and realizes, hey, everybody here's on scholarship, and now he's in Sunday, and the elevation of that is everyone's getting paid and everybody was good where they came from too. Like there's a little bit of something extra as he's coming through that, because he's got to finish and show you and prove to the world that he belongs here. And when you have that hunger and someone's told over and over again what they're not, all he's focused on is showing you exactly what he is.
Yeah, and he showed me he's a guy that I don't want to expose. I don't want to try to get him on practice squad. I don't want the rest of the league to have an opportunity right now, because there's not a ton of talent on this running back depth chart that could evolve into something big. But I don't want to lose Mafa so I can keep a half season of Miles Sanders until he gets hurt, who's on his last leg.
He's already hurt. He's already been hurt. He's going to be hurt.
Yeah.
He's been hurt for 2 years.
So I'm keeping Mafa. I'm making sure he's on the roster. Is he your third running back? Probably. Zion Childress up to starting nickel until further notice, just because he made some plays, led the team in tackles, and we know Kamon Hall was a joke when they tried to tell us 2 weeks ago that he's going to be a good slot. Liufau, starter for me. I don't know if it's him and Murray or him and Sanborn, but it's probably all three of them together in base. But what do you do in nickel? I want to have Liufau on the field. And then Holden. Holden might be the strongest take that I have. I think he's your third best wide receiver. And I know Tolbert produced, and I know Brooks, Flournoy had a nice game, and Turpin might be a more impactful player, but I want to bet on the rise of Tayan Holden, who was a college star who just couldn't run fast enough to get drafted.
Yeah, remember too, Shoddy's still really high on Tolbert, and he's a guy who's grown. He's produced, and that production has doubled right year over year. He's a guy who looks like he's still on the rise, has a lot to prove. Same thing I just said about Phil Mafa. Doubles because of who's wearing number 1. Like, let's go, wide receiver 3. This is a battle that we're all looking forward to in the coming weeks.
All right, Cowboys back at it. We'll be all over it this week as they prepare to take on the Ravens coming up this Saturday at AT&T Stadium. Going to be a 6:00 kickoff, and we are excited about that. You can get all of our socials, our written words, and our latest videos at howboutwow.com. Anything else to say, New Bear, before we let the folks go?
Just that, going into this second run back of it, like as excited as you might be, and as much as you think about what Will Grier projects to be or might look like as the backup quarterback in a pinch, what we got to pay attention to is how Joe Milton goes through the process, right? If this is about execution, it's not about, oh, hey, that ball looked real. That was a tight spiral that was 100 miles an hour, 5 yards over the dude who was wide open's head, right? As we go through the machinations of week 2, what does it look like when he comes out, and how do they ease him? How does he take someone off the ball to make the easy throws? And what does Schottenheimer and company do to script some of the stuff into the game to let him feel more composed, feel more ready by maybe getting contact, by maybe having an easy throw, by getting into that rhythm, as opposed to just being like, oh, hey, the dude was wide open. Why can't you hit him? Go out park and have your friend go to the Buick in the street and turn around. Sometimes the more wide open they are, the harder it is to hit them. Because in your head, you're like, don't mess up. And then it's the easiest thing in the world to do. Rock and fire and come hell what may, because of how the Lord made the young man.
Yeah, there's something to look forward to there. I'll take that point under advisement, New Bear. You have made me a little bit more optimistic about Joe Milton than I've been at any point since Saturday's game against the Rams, because maybe it's a comfort level with the offense that's going to allow things to slow down a little bit for him and to relax and take advantage of his tools instead of trying to force everything. Okay. Until next time, how about wow?